My brother, 2 years older than me, has always been my camping partner. We share a deep connection forged through countless adventures in the wild. Since we were kids, we've built forts, raced BMX bikes, and explored the woods together. We've shared secrets whispered under starry skies and learned to rely on each other in the face of challenges, both big and small. He's my confidant, my protector, and the one person who makes me feel truly invincible. There's a silent understanding between us, a bond built on shared experiences and unspoken trust. In 2016, our explorations expanded beyond our local woods. We embarked on cross-country trips, venturing into the vast landscapes of the U.S. We've explored the hidden depths of caves, hiked through winding canyons, and even scaled towering cliffs. Every trip was a new chapter in our shared story, a testament to our adventurous spirits. This particular trip in 2019 was different. A palpable tension hung in the air. We both felt it, a sense of unease that settled deep in our bones. We were in our mid-20s, seasoned campers by then. I had hunted in this area before, but this was the first time my brother joined me. The forest was a sprawling wilderness, crisscrossed by rough county roads that were barely more than 2-track paths. We packed my truck, 3 tents included, 1 each for sleeping, and a third to store gear and change clothes. The drive was long, the forest dense, pressing in on either side of the narrow, twisting road. We were miles from civilization, nestled in the heart of nowhere. The nearest main road was a distant 8 to 10 miles away. We arrived late, set up camp in the fading light, and fell asleep, exhausted from the journey. The next day, we scouted and tracked, then returned to camp, prepared dinner, ate, and shared a few drinks, the familiar rhythm of our camping routine. It was still early, but after a long day, we decided to call it a night. Everything felt normal until I woke to a thud against my tent. My brother's voice, sharp with urgency, called my name. I knew instantly something was wrong. He burst into my tent, his face pale in the pre-dawn darkness, probably around 4:30 or 5 a.m. He put a finger to his lips, silencing me. "Shh," he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. We sat in silence, listening. Then we heard it, a sound I still struggle to comprehend. It was a chorus of laughter, high-pitched, discordant, almost like women's voices, but distorted, otherworldly, as if echoing from a great distance. It came in waves, punctuated by brief moments of chilling silence. The laughter morphed, descending into low, guttural groans that seemed to vibrate the very ground beneath us. I regret not grabbing my phone to record it, but in that moment, it felt surreal, too shocking to process. The unsettling sounds continued for what felt like an hour, until the first hint of dawn broke through the darkness. A strange energy permeated the air, a tingling sensation, like static clinging to my skin. Minutes after the sounds ceased, rain began to fall, quickly escalating into a ferocious thunderstorm, the likes of which I had never witnessed while camping. The weather forecast had predicted clear skies. The storm ripped stakes from the ground, tearing at our tents and gear. Stakes we had hammered in with an axe were violently pulled out, defying logic and reason. My brother refuses to discuss the incident, dismissing it as the sound of machinery being dragged. But in that moment, we were both gripped by an undeniable fear. The middle of the night, miles from any town, and yet we heard and experienced something inexplicable. Something that left an indelible mark on our memories. I've never had a paranormal experience before, but I can't explain this one. It was a chilling encounter in a remote wilderness, a night filled with strange sounds, unsettling energy, and a violent storm that came out of nowhere. A night that continues to haunt my thoughts to this day. About 3 years ago, in late November, my husband and I had a creepy experience that began with a sense of unease and ended with a terrifying car chase. We were living in Seattle at the time and loved surfing, usually heading to Nia Bay or Westport. While those spots offered great waves, they meant long drives. This particular weekend, the surf forecast along the coast was dismal. Rough waves and stormy conditions. Disappointed but determined, we started searching for safer surfing options. We decided on the Strait of Juan de Fuca, a beautiful but isolated area accessible only via Highway 112, which runs from Port Angeles to Nia Bay. Cell service is almost non-existent along this stretch of road, and the few towns are small and sparsely populated, lending an air of remoteness to the region. Our chosen surf spot was Twin, a familiar location we'd surfed before and felt comfortable with. The surf report predicted the best waves early in the morning. To maximize our time, we decided to drive out the night before and sleep in our car at Twin. We expected solitude, and we got it. Arriving around 3:30 p.m., we saw only one other vehicle, a young couple's camper van parked nearby. We parked, cooked dinner, and I took a short walk on the beach. Just before sunset, we heard a loud whistling, and a man appeared, walking down the entrance road toward the beach. It was odd to see him walking along the highway, which is mostly deserted, with no destinations within walking distance. He greeted the young couple, and they invited him to their campfire. My husband and I turned in around 8 p.m., the whistling man still at the fire. I woke up an hour later, needing fresh air. I opened the car door slightly and noticed the couple's camper van was gone. A prickle of unease went through me, but I dismissed it as fatigue and went back to sleep. At 11 p.m., I woke up abruptly, startling my husband. He woke too, asking what was wrong. "Nothing," I said, though I felt inexplicably on edge. I lay there, listening intently, aware of a growing feeling that something wasn't right. About 20 minutes later, I woke again to see my husband sitting up, very still, listening. His silence was unnerving. "Someone was tapping on the windows," he whispered as I turned on the car lights. Fear flooded through me. We quickly put on our shoes, grabbed flashlights and pepper spray, and opened the car doors. Everything was silent and pitch black. My husband went to check the trees behind us. I stayed by the car, shining my flashlight onto the beach, but saw nothing. As I sat on the back bumper, my husband rushed back. "We need to leave." There's a car parked by the exit road, lights off, engine running. We threw our belongings in the back, started the car, and sped toward the entrance road. In the panic, my husband became disoriented and turned the wrong way, heading towards Nia Bay. As we passed the exit road, we saw the car again, now with its headlights on, gaining on us. The tension in the car was palpable. Someone was definitely following us. The highway was narrow, forest on one side, ocean on the other. We spotted a small turnout, and my husband swerved left. The pursuing car continued down the highway, not slowing. We sped toward Port Angeles at 90 miles per hour, the feeling of being watched and chased clinging to us. The car didn't follow, but the incident left an unsettling mark. I still wonder about that car, that night, and the unanswered questions that linger in the darkness. When I was about 12, I went to summer camp for the last time. It was called Camp Catan, nestled on 50 acres next to a school. We had wooden cabins, swimming pools, a lake, hiking trails, and fields for sports. Days were filled with swimming, games, canoeing, and archery. Once a year, the camp rented a larger property south of Atlanta for the older kids. It was a special overnight trip with campfires and outdoor adventures. I'd gone the previous year and had a blast. We stayed up late, laughing and talking, huddled on a cold concrete slab by a creek, overlooking miles of old farmland dotted with small trees and wild plants. The counselors, mostly college-aged, were pretty laid back. Rules were relaxed. We could sleep in, and roll call wasn't until noon. We'd explore, play games, just hang out. Then around 4 p.m., we'd pack up and return to the main camp. This time, though, my 3 friends and I hatched a plan. We'd sneak out before dawn while the counselors were still asleep and explore the forbidden farmlands. We packed extra food and warm jackets. As soon as we woke, we grabbed our gear and slipped away. We crossed the creek bordering the camp, entering the untamed farmland. It felt ancient, with broken fences and overgrown vegetation. A rusty barbed wire fence snaked across the hills, some trees growing right through it, twisting around the wire. We followed the creek, figuring it would lead us back eventually. But after a mile, it vanished, the landscape shifting dramatically. Wild pines gave way to rows of corn, our path obliterated. The sun was rising, our excitement pushing us forward. We climbed a small hill. A farmer in a broad hat and overalls spotted us at the top. He looked startled, but we were too far away to be caught, so we bolted when he shouted. We trudged through the corn for another mile when the landscape abruptly changed again, as if demarcated by invisible lines. We came upon a natural gate, corn stalks bent into an arch. Beyond it, a picture-perfect brook gurgled, surrounded by thick oaks. We pressed on, confident we could easily retrace our steps. Our watches showed only an hour and a half had passed. The peaceful brook led to a steep, rocky climb, thick with thorns and no clear path. After debating turning back, scratched and weary, we reached a vast valley. Strange trees lined it, planted in an unnatural, almost deliberate pattern, drawing us downward. They had long, thin branches, and their bark had peeled off, revealing smooth, pasty white trunks. Most unsettling were their blood-red leaves. No grass grew in the valley, just moss. The air hung damp and heavy. We descended, losing all sense of time, surrounded only by those eerie trees. Near the valley floor, we found a 3-story Victorian house. Just as we saw it, the sky opened, turning the valley to mud. Even from a distance, the house looked ancient and worn, sagging under years of rain. It was all wood, with a few unbroken single-pane windows. Only the supports for the front steps were something other than wood. Concrete, I think. The front door stood wide open. We felt foolish for even considering it, but wet fools seek dry refuge. We'd get our bearings, we told ourselves, then slip back to camp unnoticed. I, the self-proclaimed leader, went first. The first step creaked ominously, but held. The entryway was small, with a long staircase leading up. We saw holes in the second floor leading to darkness, but the stairway was lit by the front windows. The sound of rain was loud, yet the entryway remained dry. Beyond the light from the door, the house was dark, smelling of mold and damp earth. I set down my pack and pulled out my compass. I was checking our snacks when I heard it, a moan like wind and rain from the upper floors. Then, the loudest footsteps I've ever heard thundered down the stairs. My friends ran instantly. I hesitated. It was bright enough to see most of the stairway, but there was nothing there. I grabbed my bag and bolted, slamming the door. The wet wood felt soft under my hand, like wet paper. As I ran, the last step crumbled, splinters flying. I scrambled up the hill after my friends, rain stinging my cuts and scrapes. Then the sound of the door exploding open echoed through the valley. a sound that seemed to shake the very earth. The trip back is a blur, but we somehow made it to camp around 2 p.m., managing to grab a shaky, late breakfast. Or maybe it was lunch.